Hello, my name's Sophie, aka Cinemonet, and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about knitting and crochet, amongst other things. And I'm back. I had a little hiatus. Thank you for bearing with me if you've come back, and hi if you're new. I just took a bit of a break from YouTube and pretty much everything else. I haven't been very well, but I'm really happy to be back. During my time off, I did not do very much knitting or very much of anything, but I did watch a lot of films. And I have a lot of new content planned for you now that I'm well enough to film, and I'm very excited about it. And we're going to start today by talking about knitwear from cinema history that has me in a chokehold. Now, this is not an impartial listicle. This is not like the top 10 pieces of knitwear from cinema history ever. This is not a comprehensive overview of knitwear in cinema. This is like my personal archive of knitwear pieces that have or did have me at some point in a chokehold. And some of these pieces are so important to me that they are part of kind of the history of cinema that and the history of like fashion in cinema that shaped my personal style as somebody who grew up being a cinephile. And developed their personal style at a time where they were watching tons and tons of films from all over the place. And I think you'll probably see, if you've watched my channel before, you'll see some of my personal style in this. And some of them are newer discoveries and things that like are really inspiring me at the moment and things that I really want to add to my wardrobe. And I'm also aware that those of us in the Northern Hemisphere are ending summer and starting to think about autumn. And if you're anything like me, I've started to think about what I want to wear in autumn. I've been getting some of my clothes out of storage. I have been shopping for some things on Vinted secondhand. I have been getting rid of some stuff that doesn't fit me or doesn't seem right. And I've been thinking about what I want my style to be over the autumn and winter. And also, importantly, I've been thinking about what I want to knit and what I want to crochet and what I want to add to my wardrobe. Like, we are staring down the barrel of knit and crochet season, lads. It's our season. It's our season. And I'm sure it's on all of our minds. So I thought that I would put this together partly just for fun, for me, and partly because I hoped to be inspired by it, and I have been inspired by it. And so I hope I can provide you with some inspiration. The films I've chosen range from, I think the earliest film is 1960 and the latest film is 2022. And I'm going to go chronologically just because that's as good an order as any to go in. You might see some of your favorites here. I've definitely chosen some quite well-known knits from cinema history. And also, I hope I've chosen some that you haven't heard of before. And I would love to hear from you below what your favorite knitwear from cinema is. And I'd also love to know whether you'd like to have a deep dive on any of these, because several of these pieces I could make a whole hour-long YouTube deep dive about because they're so interesting. And also some of these films feature so much knitwear that I would love to do a comprehensive breakdown. So do let me know below, and please do like and subscribe, particularly because I've had a break. I'm not sure if the algorithm is going to be a big fan of me having disappeared for 2 months. So please do like this video and please do subscribe if you like this kind of content. Okay, let's dive in. So this won't be a surprise to any of you who've watched my content before, but there is heavy representation of the 1960s in this roundup. So we're starting with a pair of films from 1960, two very different films. Let's Make Love, an American film, and À bout de souffle, or Breathless, a French film, and the beginning of the new wave. Let's Make Love stars Marilyn Monroe and Yves Montand, the French actor. So even though this film is American and À bout de souffle is French, there's a connection because there's an American actress in À bout de souffle and a French actor in Let's Make Love. I will try and keep my movie geekery to a minimum, but I can't promise it anything, lads. I'm so sorry, I can't promise anything. Let's Make Love is honestly not a great film. It's not a great film. It's Marilyn Monroe's, it's her third to last film that she filmed and her second to last film that was actually released. The Misfits was the last film that she recorded that was actually released. And it's directed by Georges Cukor, and it's not very good. It's not very good. A French billionaire who finds himself being satirized in a play, and he goes and auditions for the play to play a satirized version of himself. And there he meets Amanda, played by Marilyn Monroe, an actress. And the scene where he meets Amanda is the scene where we meet one of the greatest sweaters of cinema history ever. So Marilyn Monroe as Amanda is rehearsing My Heart Belongs to Daddy. It's a famous Cole Porter song. And she is wearing an incredible Aran knit blue or lilac sweater with just tights underneath. And she looks absolutely incredible, lads. This is one of my favourite knitwear moments from cinema history, partly because of the way that it is styled. And this film is partly also responsible for bringing cable knits and traditional like Aran knits and Irish knits into Hollywood and into American fashion more generally. They hadn't historically been a big part of American fashion, and they had only recently started becoming like trendy outside of Ireland quite recently due to the increase of tourism in Ireland in the post-war era, and more people, particularly Americans, started spending time in Ireland. And this sweater is styled so beautifully. It's so sexy because it's an oversized Aran knit, like cabled, like traditional wool, probably very itchy sweater, and it's styled with just a pair of tights, which is so sexy, but was very controversial and scandalous at the time. I could make a whole video just about this sweater, but it's styled with just a pair of tights, which was quite controversial at the time, but also like a really sexy out of the box way of styling someone. Like the obvious solution in a film like this, which is not a particularly, honestly, not a particularly thoughtful film. It's a very like filler film, I think, done by the studio, like to just use up their actors in contract. And I think it was also a bit of a vehicle for Yves Montand, who was a very famous actor in France, to like try and make it in the States, even though he didn't speak much English. And rumor has it on set that he found it really tough because he actually didn't really understand much of what was happening. So this film is sort of, it's like, you know, everyone's just like doing their job in this film. Like no one's like having the best time. No one's like under the illusion they're making a masterpiece. And probably like a much more obvious way of doing the wardrobe for this scene would be if Dorothy Jeakins, who was the costume designer, just like put Marilyn Monroe in like hot pants and a cute bra, you know, or like a tiny little dress. There are ways of styling this, particularly if she's on stage dancing in like, you know, a dancer's outfit, that she could have got away with basically putting Marilyn Monroe in underwear and having her be sexy. But there is something much sexier about being in a cable knit like traditional wool sweater and just tights. It's so hot, it's so stylish. It's like a sweater dress before the sweater dress became popular. It's really, really beautiful. And the history of the sweater is really interesting. Dorothy Jeakins was the costume designer, and she had worked a lot with the director John Huston, who had also worked a lot with Marilyn Monroe. And John Huston had spent a lot of time living in Ireland, and he had gotten to know the magic of Aran knit sweaters, particularly those sold in Cleo's in Dublin. And Dorothy Jeakins found out about the Aran sweater through working with John Huston, and she ordered the sweaters on like a short order from these women in Ireland through Cleo's. And these 4 women, basically, like they needed 4 copies of the sweater because like for film you often need more than one version of the outfit. So they ordered 4 of the sweaters, and these women over Christmas had to knit them, and they were just like home, you know, it's a cottage industry. They were just knitting their sweaters at home like we do. They used 4 different sweaters for the film, and they were all knitted by different women in the same town, but they all have slightly different patterns because they weren't working off a pattern. They were just knitting the way that they knit Aran sweaters. So they just all had slightly different patterns and motifs. Like some of them had bobble stitches or like blackberry stitches, and some of them didn't. In the different shots, if you look closely, you can see that they look slightly different. And the other thing is, it looks lilac or blue, but some people say that actually the sweaters were white or cream because they were just using like traditional Irish undyed wool, but the studio lights made them look blue. Some people say that the sweaters were blue and they were dyed using denim, so by basically like boiling denim and using the indigo to dye the wool. Very interesting. Super interesting sweater. They had loads of problems filming as well because the sweater would stretch out because it was so heavy and they needed it to look sexy, so it's pinned in like 1,000 places. But the final effect is beautiful, really, really beautiful. And I think it has such an interesting backstory and it's such a sexy moment. And that is one of my favorite sweaters, partly because it's stunning and I love the way it's styled. I love that style of like having something that is oversized with something really skimpy underneath, or like using something that is kind of cozy and giving it a sexy edge, but not in a kind of obvious way. There's a kind of undone messy femininity to it that I'm an absolute sucker for. It gets me every time. Second sweater I want to talk about is not actually a sweater, it's a t-shirt. It's a knitted t-shirt and it is from Breathless, or À bout de souffle, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. So this knitted t-shirt is the first thing that we see Jean Seberg in Breathless, and she is walking down the street in Paris selling the New York Herald Tribune in a New York Herald Tribune t-shirt, and it's not cotton with print on it, it is knitted with, I guess, duplicate stitching. It fascinates me. It's a very fine rib knit. And there have been copies of it made, but they've just made it into like with a t-shirt material, like they've just made it out of jersey with the logo printed on it. And I think it would be really cool to knit it. And it's just a really cool, unique piece of knitwear. And also what's interesting about Goddard and this film, Breathless, is that there was no formal costume designer. So Goddard encouraged Jean Seberg and Jean-Paul Belmondo and the rest of the cast to wear their own clothes and like to kind of express themselves and their characters through like choosing their own clothes. And as a result of this film and Jean Seberg's like outfit choices throughout the film, the gamine style was born, which is the much more elegant and respectable parent of the manic pixie dream girl. And the gamine style is still popular today. It's kind of like a boyish, carefree, very French, very sophisticated, but also like playing around with gender a little bit in a kind of soft way. This Herald Tribune t-shirt just really does it for me. It just really does it for me. The way it's styled with her haircut and the rest of the outfit, and the way that it signals her difference, like she's this American student in Paris trying to sell this newspaper. Beautiful piece of knitwear, and it fits beautifully. It's like it's ribbed and the sleeves are short, but they're not super short. They're like and they're quite, I think like the armhole is quite high and the sleeves are quite fitted, and it's just a really, really gorgeous piece of knitwear, and I wonder what the hell happened to it. Now, our next film is a film that I assume that all of us are familiar with, Breakfast at Tiffany's from 1961. And the sweater is the sweater that Holly Golightly is wearing at the kind of denouement of the film. So she is getting ready to move to Brazil to marry her millionaire boyfriend. And Paul comes to her apartment and they spend the day together. And then she is arrested. And she's wearing this sweater the whole time. And it is a really beautiful sweater. It's like a cropped beige kind of oatmeal color sweater. It's very simple and it has this really, really beautiful, I want to say a cowl neck or a turtleneck, but this very wide, like mock neck, turtleneck situation going on. And it's such a unique silhouette and it's really beautiful. And you have to have, I think, a certain kind of style to be able to pull it off because it is so simple. And she pulls it off in a way that makes it look incredibly elegant and kind of done up. Though I will say that what I noticed in like thinking about this film and planning this film is that the sweaters in films tend to come at moments where the characters are feeling emotionally vulnerable or undone in some way or need to be like taken care of or like they're having a tough time. And this sweater is definitely there to signal Holly Golightly's imminent departure from the city and her decision to embrace domesticity. So it's definitely a more dressed down outfit. There's only so much that Holly Golightly or like Audrey Hepburn can look dressed down, particularly when like most of the pieces in this film were made by Givenchy. So we've made it to the second half of the 60s. I promise these aren't all from the 60s, just the first like 4 or 5. Next sweater is probably one that you'll have heard of. It's definitely one that's often cited as like one of the most influential sweaters in cinema history alongside Harry's and When Harry Met Sally. The sweater Faye Dunaway is wearing playing Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. So this is a sweater that she wears for a good like 10-15 minutes of the film. It's a sweater that's like, you know, it has like a lot of screen time, that sweater. And it's a mustard coloured short sleeved sweater with waist shaping and cable knit details on the arms. It's a really gorgeous sweater. I think like in terms of like historical fashion style, it's the earliest because even though this film was made in 67, it's set in the 30s, obviously. And Theodora Van Runkle, the costume designer. Sorry, can we just talk for a second about the names of costume designers? Every single costume designer in this list has a name that sounds like I made it up. It sounds like I made it up, like I had to like do a presentation and I'd run out of time and I'd forgotten and I made it up. But I promise you that her name is actually Theodora Van Runkle. Theodora Van Runkle, this was the first film that she was the costume designer for. She had been working as like, I think a wardrobe assistant for a long time. And she was mentored by Edith Head, who was the costume designer on Breakfast at Tiffany's and the head of wardrobe at Paramount. But this was her first film that she was officially the costume designer for. And she rejected all of Edith Head's advice in order to design the costumes for this film. Edith Head, according to Wikipedia, told her to do everything in chiffon. I don't know what do everything in chiffon means. I feel like that's a That's something that if you're a costume designer or you work in costume or fashion, you'd understand that reference. Anyway, she rejected all of that advice and she used a lot of wool, famously, in her costume design. And it paid off because she won an Oscar for Best Costume Design. So can't argue with that. And this, I mean, all of Faye Dunaway's costumes in this film are impeccable. They're so beautiful. Apparently, Faye Dunaway did not like the costumes. She did not want to wear them. She found them frumpy. But by the end of it, she was so convinced that Theodora Van Runkle was dressing Faye Dunaway on and off screen, dressing her off screen as well. And Theodora Van Runkle went on to have like an incredible career dressing loads of people. And also Bonnie and Clyde really sort of marked like a new period of fashion, like the way that Bonnie and Clyde was received in terms of like the aesthetics and the fashion of the film really influenced people's dress. And like I think it kind of put an end to the obsession with the miniskirt that happened in the mid-60s, and people started wearing longer skirts again, which then continued into the 70s. And lots of people attribute that in part to Bonnie and Clyde and the 30s fashion and Theodora Van Runkle's styling of Faye Dunaway in particular for women's fashion. This sweater is no exception. It's tailored beautifully, giving a masculine edge to Faye Dunaway's tailoring as Bonnie is really important for like the complexity of her character. So there's like a hardness and a softness to her, and this sweater is no exception. There's a hardness in terms of like the way that it's tailored and, you know, it like the sturdiness of wool and things like that, but then there's a softness in terms of like the waist shaping and the shoulder shaping. It's a kind of 30s power dressing sweater. I forgot how tender and lovely this film is, actually. I rewatched it when I was really ill and I forgot like how tender and complex and lovely it is. I also wanted to say that there is another connection to the other film. So like there's a connection with Breakfast at Tiffany's through Edith Head mentoring Theodora Van Runkle. There's also a connection because Arthur Penn, the director, and Warren Beatty, who plays Clyde but also was a producer on the film, were both really influenced by French New Wave and Godard and Breathless. And so the editing style and some of the ways in which scenes were filmed, I think it's the final scene, spoiler alert, where Bonnie and Clyde are caught and ambushed and meet their fate, basically. And they filmed it in slow motion, which apparently filming something in slow motion is a tool that Godard used a lot. Okay, we're almost out of the 1960s, but not quite. We've now come to what is probably the film that has influenced my aesthetic most in my entire life. This film is the biggest influence on my style of any film, and that is Belle de Jour, 1967, a breakout movie for Catherine Deneuve, and also a breakout film for the young designer Yves Saint Laurent. And the sweater I have picked is not one of the more famous or iconic outfits from the film, but it is iconic to me nonetheless, and it's a beautiful piece of knitwear. Séverine is a repressed young married woman, but is plagued by fantasies about her own sexuality and decides to become a sex worker during the day while her husband's at work, which is why she's called Belle de Jour. And the costuming in the film is really clever because Séverine is this very feminine, very soft-spoken, very quiet housewife. And her outfits reflect that. And then when she goes into sex work, her outfits become a lot like harder and more structured and more like protective. And then through the film, once she's doing the sex work as Belle de Jour, when she's Belle de Jour, she's in one look, and when she's Séverine, she's in another. And then they kind of, those looks get like resolved at the end. I could do a whole video essay about the costuming of Belle de Jour. So the costume designer is ostensibly Hélène Nourry, but pretty much all of the iconic costumes Catherine Deneuve wears in the film were designed by Yves Saint Laurent, who was at the time a young designer, who Catherine Deneuve, who was a young actor at the time, was a really big fan of. And Catherine Deneuve recommended Yves Saint Laurent for the costumes and ended up creating some of the most iconic looks in cinema of all time, and also ended up creating several pieces that have ended up defining the Yves Saint Laurent brand, which is now rebranded as Saint Laurent since Yves' death. But the sweater I want to talk about is a white cashmere v-neck sweater that Séverine wears as Séverine, as the soft housewife when she's playing tennis. And it comes just after a brothel scene. And she goes to play tennis with her friend, and she's playing like the good housewife. And she bumps into somebody who ends up being her undoing. He's the person who connects both these two disconnected sides of her life. Like he's from her like housewife life, but he infiltrates her brothel life and he finds out who she really is. And this is like the first scene of her undoing. And it's really important that she's wearing this Yves Saint Laurent like perfectly put together white outfit, this kind of like this sign of purity. She looks like a little lamb and she's being sent to the slaughter by the circumstances of her life. The film so hinges on this sense of vulnerability and empowerment around sexuality. A lamb being devoured by a wolf is like perfect slightly misogynist image for this film, and Yves Saint Laurent just absolutely nails it with these outfits. So it's a simple one, but the reason why it's in this list is that firstly, it's just a stunning way of using knitwear to communicate complex themes and to communicate a vibe and a mood very specifically. And second of all, I think it's a timeless staple that I would kill for. It looks so soft. I wonder if it still exists or if any of these still exist. I did, while I was researching this, Google and find a few of the pieces that had like been auctioned off over the last like 20 years or so. But others of them, I don't know where they are. We're finally out of the 60s and we are skipping straight to the 80s to Wim Wenders' 1984 film, Paris, Texas. And the sweater I want to talk about is Natasha Kinski's bright pink, fluffy mohair sweater. Natasha Kinski plays Jane in this film, and Jane is the protagonist's long-lost lover and mother of his child. They fell in love very quickly. They had a baby. Things went wrong. She ran away and went into sex work. And on a road trip to find her, he goes to her place of work, and it's a booth with like one-way glass where the punter or the John can see the woman inside the box, but they can't see her and they can only talk through a phone. And so he goes there, he picks up the phone and he starts talking to her, and she slowly realizes that it's him. And she's wearing this sweater, and it just, okay, first of all, it's a stunning sweater. I want that sweater. It's so beautiful. It has this like, it's quite long, almost like a sweater dress, and then it has this like low back, and it's so sexy. There is something about a sexy sweater that has me in a chokehold, as you can probably tell from this list. And there's something really, again, like soft and hard about it. And there's a power play, I think, between Jane and Travis, because he's come to her place of work. He doesn't know if she wants to see him, and she is a sex worker, which is like a, you know, historically like forever derided career. And she's in this kind of vulnerable position. On the other hand, she has a lot of the power because she's the one who's performing. Like, she does feel like both tender and exposed by the encounter. And there's something about the way that the sweater covers her at the front, but doesn't cover her at the back. So it's kind of protective, but then also it's not protective at the back. And then also there's this like brightness and fluffiness to it. There's this kind of on-showness or something. And it doesn't seem like a coincidence that the next time we see her, she's dressed all in black. But I love this sweater. I think it's stunning. The way that it works in relation to the scene, which is the booth is kind of set up almost like a stage. Like I suppose it is a stage. It's like this woman, you know, you're watching, like you're performing to one person at a time and you're watching a one-woman show, and sex work is like a performance in a way. But there's something about it that's kind of like the undone 1950s housewife or something, as like an 80s take on a 50s wayward ingenue. And aesthetically, I can do all this like deep feminist analysis, but honestly, I just want that fucking sweater. It's just gorgeous. And the aesthetics of Wim Wenders' films are gorgeous. And the aesthetics of the whole of Paris, Texas are gorgeous. I could just eat the film. I find it so delicious. And this sweater is no exception. And I would love to knit something like this coming autumn, winter. Now we're going to the end of the 80s to a classic sweater movie, 1989's When Harry Met Sally. Sweaters at their best. Meg Ryan at her best. Nora Ephron at her best. This movie is a sweater lover's wet dream. It's amazing. The film was directed by Rob Reiner, and the costume designer is Gloria Gresham, who designed the costumes for so many films of the 80s and 90s. She did the Ghostbusters films, and she also did the costumes for Misery, which is one of my favorite films, and I love the costumes in Misery. She had like a very particular way of working, and she often shopped in the place they were shooting at. So in the case of When Harry Met Sally, she shopped a lot in East Village and Lower East Side and like Chelsea boutiques and stuff. Like she kind of shopped in like downtown Manhattan boutiques and secondhand shops, and she often took the actors with her when she was buying the costumes. And the sweater I want to talk about is not Harry's iconic sweater. donned by Billy Crystal, just because I feel as though it is an iconic piece of knitwear, but it's talked about so much, and there's also like so many patterns out there, and I feel like sometimes the other iconic knitwear in When Harry Met Sally gets forgotten. So you're actually going to get 2 for 1. I'm going to talk about 2 other sweaters that I love in this film, because the film is full of sweaters. They're wearing sweaters 24/7 in this film. So the first sweater I want to talk about, which actually Sally wears twice, is Sally's red cable sweater. She's wearing it in the same scene that Billy Crystal is wearing his Harry sweater, the cable knit sweater that everybody talks about, in Harry's new apartment, which, by the way, is like my apartment goal. Like, all I want in life is an apartment that looks like that. And she's also wearing it when she's with film icon Carrie Fisher. I fucking love Carrie Fisher, in a bookstore talking about Harry. So she's wearing it in a couple of different scenes, which I love. I wish they did that more often. I think, it used to be normal practice until about 15, 20 years ago. I love it in old film and TV when characters have a wardrobe, like we have a wardrobe, and they re-wear clothes. Like, they wear clothes multiple times in the same film or the same TV series. They used to do it a lot in like shows like The X-Files. Like Mulder and Scully would have like 6 or 7 outfits, and they would re-wear the outfits over the course of a season. And yeah, Sally wears the sweater a couple of times during the film, which is normal, because why wouldn't you wear your sweater more than once? But we don't see it that often. Anyway, she wears this red sweater twice, and I love it. I love it. I would love to do a video where I recreate it. I actually have had the yarn to make this for a really long time. But it can be really difficult to find the time and the organization to film a project vlog about such a big project. But it's gorgeous. It's a cropped red, kind of fluffy looking sweater. I believe that it must have some mohair or some like level of fluff in it. It does have like an aura. And it has a cable running down the middle of it, which I think is really gorgeous. And it's a bit simpler than Harry's traditional Aran knit sweater, but has really gorgeous shaping and like this really beautiful detail. And then it also has like a roll neck, which I think is lovely. I love a roll neck. She also pairs it iconically with this pair of like black culotte short things, which I think look really gorgeous, and a pair of black shoes, like a pair of black brogues. I think this is a wonderful autumn winter look. I want it in my style reference guide for autumn winter 25-26, and I think this sweater is absolutely iconic. The second sweater I want to talk about is the sweater. So this is the sweater that Sally is wearing during the famous scene where she performs in Cat's Deli on the Lower East Side, and she's wearing a really gorgeous fine knit brown cable V-neck sweater, and it's in this gorgeous shade of chocolate brown, mocha mousse. And it's a very simple sweater, but I think really wearable. And also, I love it. I feel like I keep saying this, but I love it. The juxtaposition between the sexiness and then the like everydayness of the outfit. So she's not dressed in like lingerie or like a low cut top. She's dressed in a brown cable knit sweater, and someone's like, I'll have what she's having. Iconic. And also just underrated. Both those sweaters are underrated, especially the brown one, but I just think they're underrated. Whole film full of fantastic sweaters. I would love to do an entire YouTube video about the knitwear in When Harry Met Sally. I'd also like to do one about the knitwear in You've Got Mail. Just Nora Ephron knitwear. We are in the 90s, and we're going to start with one of my favorite films of all time. Is it one of the best films in the world? No, absolutely not. But for whatever reason, it's one of the films I've watched the most, and it is one of the films that is dearest to my heart, and that is Mermaids. It's a 1990 film starring Winona Ryder and Christina Ricci and Cher. And the sweater I want to talk about is the sweater that Cher is wearing, playing Rachel Flax, at a couple of points during the film. We've guessed. It's an oversized green mohair sweater that I just think is absolutely gorgeous. So Mermaids is made in 1990, but set in 1968, around the time of JFK's assassination, just before and after. And it tells the story of Rachel Flax, who is a single Jewish mother, and her 2 children. Cher, as Rachel Flax, wears the sweater a couple of times. She wears it once on like a typical Sunday being a mum, taking her kids to like the swimming pool and like going on a date with a very oddly cast Bob Hoskins. Like Bob Hoskins, the British actor, is cast as Rachel's love interest. The only explanation I can come up with for it is that they wanted Danny DeVito, but it was like not free. But they cast Bob Hoskins, and his American accent is like not very good.
Well, When you expect the worst from people, they usually deliver.
It gives me this like cringy feeling to hear Bob Hoskins talk in an American accent, the same way as it gives me a cringy feeling to hear Dick Van Dyke talk in a British accent.
I feel what's to happen. All happened before.
There's something really horrible about like attempts at transatlantic accents. So she wears it as a kind of like her mumcore outfit, basically. It's probably the least sexy outfit she wears in the entire film, but I love it, and I think it's sexy in its own way. She also wears it a second time when Charlotte, her teenage daughter, played by Winona Ryder, runs away, and she is trying to find her and like anxiously waiting for her to come back. She looks very gorgeous and very glamorous in it in a way that only Cher could, but also it's an incredibly feminine sweater in its own way. I think the color of green that it is really interesting. It's like a kind of chartreuse-ish tint. It's not quite neon and it's not quite lime. There's something piquant about it. It's a gorgeous color, and the amount of fluffiness and the way that like people in the 20th century were not afraid of like a chunky fluffy sweater. Like they didn't need to hold yarn double, although I'm not against it. They could just use a big old chunky yarn. It just looks like it's knit in like a really old fashioned yarn. It looks itchy as hell, but it also looks like incredibly sexy and incredibly cozy, and it is one of the sweaters I think about the most often. Next up, we have a true 90s classic, While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock. This is one of those films that I think that we must have had on video, or was one of the films that my local newsagents would rent out for 50p on video, because I've watched this film an amount of times that is not commensurate to how invested I am in the film or how much the film means to me. Like, it's a good film. It's fine. It's like, it's kind of like it's in the mix of like a classic mid-90s film, but like I feel like I've seen it so many times I can quote it off by heart. I'm not really sure why, and I can only presume that it's because we either had it on VHS or it was readily available on VHS. While You Were Sleeping, starring Sandra Bullock, it's an underrated Christmas film, I believe. It's set in Chicago. It's about quite a lonely woman called Lucy, and she is in love with this like businessman commuter who she's never spoken to, who buys a ticket for the train from her every morning. And then one day this guy gets pushed onto the tracks by someone and she rescues him, but he's in a coma. And when he goes to the hospital, she tells everyone that she is his fiance, even though she's never spoken to him. It is a comedy of errors from that point onwards. But the whole film, Sandra Bullock was so real for this. They were so real for doing this for her. The whole film, she's basically dressed in pajamas. There's a really good article that I'll link below that's like why it's really important to fashion history that Sandra Bullock was dressed for bed in every scene of the film. She dresses for cold weather like real people dress for cold weather. Like, it's Christmas in Chicago, so it's like minus 30 or something, and she's dressed really like we dress for minus 30. Like, she's got scarves around her head, she's wearing fingerless gloves at work, like she's got 3 hats on, and she's wearing amazing sweaters the entire way through. I could again do a whole YouTube video on While You Were Sleeping and all of the knitwear in it. Let me know if you'd like that. But the sweater I picked for the purpose of this is the sweater that she's wearing at the beginning of the film. Is an oversized marled like blue gray white sweater with giant sleeves, and to me it sums up what I think of in terms of like cozy knitwear, and like what it sums up how I want to look when I'm by myself at home, and the kind of knitwear I love to wear when I'm not on show. It is beautiful. It does that kind of like 90s grungy slouchy look. I really love how oversized the sleeves are. They're so oversized that she can hide a present for her landlord inside her sleeves, and it just does like luxurious coziness so well. And it looks like you would just have like the best day of bed rotting in this sweater, and I love it. Next up, we have a very different kind of 1995 film, Party Girl, set in New York, and an indie cult classic starring Parker Posey, made on a shoestring budget in 19 days. I love this film. It can be kind of hard to get hold of, but I think it is on Amazon at the moment, streaming if you use Amazon. The film is about a young woman called Mary, who is, as the title suggests, a party girl. She has an amazing couture and vintage wardrobe. She loves, like, she's on the party scene, she's on the rave scene, like the kind of club kids scene. Insane fashion and an incredibly cool time that I wish I had been a part of. And she's playing this woman, Mary, who is slowly realizing that she might want to do more with her life than just be a party girl. which is a shame because she's really good at being a party girl, and starts to train to become a librarian. It's a really cool film. It's like, you can kind of tell that it was shot on a budget, and you can kind of tell that it was shot in 19 days, but it's like an astonishing film. And the costumes in it are amazing. So the costume designer was Michael Clancy, and the costumes are all vintage couture that in some cases I believe he like borrowed and had, like, I think in a lot of cases he like borrowed and had to give back, or like had to kind of source through friends or friends of friends. And the sweater I want to talk about, I think about it all the time. And it is a sweater that she's wearing, ironically, when she is trying to sell all of her vintage couture to make rent, because her and her roommates are behind on rent, and when she's also considering what she wants to do with her life, and whether she wants to be a party girl anymore. And it is a cable knit sweater, and it looks at first glance like a normal cable knit sweater, but then you see the silhouette of it and the whole thing, and it kind of has this point going down. It sort of reminds me of those Simone Rocha sweaters that have like the suspenders, like these kind of suspender like things coming down each thigh, but except it's just one point in the middle. And the sweater is a 1984 autumn winter couture piece from Jean-Paul Gaultier. It's one of a couple of Gaultier sweaters that I think about a lot. There's another one that I really love that kind of has like a pointy bra built into it. I'll talk about that another time. But yeah, it's got a classic Gaultier silhouette. You can kind of tell it's Gaultier, and it's just stunning. And I love it that it makes her look like it kind of it kind of gives the same vibes as While You Were Sleeping from the top. It's got these like cozy sleeves. It's slightly oversized on her. It's got this gorgeous neck. But then from further away, you can tell that it's couture, and it has these couture details. And I think it's really beautiful. And if nothing else, Party Girl is worth watching just to clock all of the vintage couture pieces in it. And with our final two sweaters, we are jumping into the 2020s. The penultimate sweaters I have, and it's a double header again, are from the House of Gucci. I don't really have that much to say about them other than they're absolutely iconic, like peak Gucci, peak 80s, peak couture knitwear. The sweaters I want to talk about are Patrizia and Maurizio Gucci's sweaters from their ski trip in the film. Their ski trip, as if they're at school. They're like rich people ski holiday. Their marriage is a little bit on the rocks, I think, at this point in the film, and they're just enjoying some winter rich person après-ski glamorous bullshit, and they look fucking fabulous doing it. So Adam Driver is wearing an amazing cable knit Gucci sweater, so beautiful, and it's just a classic cream cable knit, but it's so thick and plump and juicy, and you could just bite into it. It looks gorgeous, and it looks gorgeous on Adam Driver's like big like fit dad bod figure. And Lady Gaga as Patrizia is wearing a black turtleneck sweater. It looks like it could be Angora, but I couldn't tell because she has a jacket on over the top. She's like a black Gucci jacket with gold buttons on over the top, and then amazing gold jewelry. There's nothing I love more than a turtleneck sweater with like some gold jewelry over the top. I think it looks beautiful, and I just think they both look stunning, and it is just an amazing example of like glamorous Italian couture, 80s extravagance and opulence, and just also like amazing tailoring and fits, and like not being afraid of a shoulder. And I think it's a really beautiful and stylish way of wearing knitwear. I would say that a lot of these examples too are like not just about the sweater itself, but about how it's styled. And I feel as though these examples like show me how versatile knitwear is and how I can style my knitwear a bit better. I think sometimes I can just think like I put a sweater on and it's the end of it, but actually like the accessories and the way that it's styled really make it. And that brings me to my last example, which is one of my favorite examples of like contemporary knitwear. It's got a very different vibe to a lot of the things I've chosen for this video. It's probably the most contemporary. House of Gucci was made the year before in 2021, but Decision to Leave was made. It's a South Korean film made in 2022. And House of Gucci, even though it was made in 2021, it's a historical film. It was all set in the 70s and 80s. So this is truly contemporary. It's made in 2022, set in modern times. It's an amazing Park Chan-wook film about a detective and a woman who he suspects of murdering her husband. It's set in South Korea, and the woman Song, who he suspects of murdering her husband, is a Chinese migrant. And it's about their complex relationship, and it's kind of a neo-noir It's a sort of like a contemporary Korean film noir. It's a beautiful film, really dramatic, and just beautifully shot. The sweaters I want to talk about, again, there's two, are really about like the styling and the outfit as much as the sweaters themselves. It's first of all an electric blue sweater, and secondly a kind of peachy rosy pink sweater, both worn by Song, the main character, played by Tang Wai. And the styling, the costume designer Jung A Kwak, lots of people were talking about how she deserved an Oscar for best costume design, because the costume design throughout this film is astonishing, but particularly Song's costumes. Song throughout wears these amazing combinations of flowy silk midi and maxi skirts and either like oversized sweaters or oversized shirts. She has an amazing combination that's like a chartreuse yellow kind of cord, like pin cord material shirt blouse thing, and then and like a blue skirt. It's amazing. The first encounter really between the detective and Song like happens in the police station. And Song is wearing this bright blue sweater, and at first she has her coat on and then she takes her coat off and they have lunch together, and the combination of the skirt, which is like a burgundy skirt, and the sweater, astonishing. And then, in a rare occurrence of outfit repeating in contemporary cinema, I already said I'm a big fan of outfit repeating, she wears that, what I believe to be that same burgundy skirt much later in the film. And her and the detective have become quite close, and she's like comforting him. She sits by his bed and she is wearing this like pinky peach, very soft looking, oversized, fine knit sweater with that same skirt. And the pairing of a fluffy oversized sweater not tucked in with a silk like A-line like flowy midi or maxi skirt, so sexy, lads, so sexy than just turning up in a bra and pants. So feminine, so soft, and so like you're just really topping from the bottom. That's what you're doing when you're wearing an outfit like that. Like, it's so feminine and it's so soft. Like, there's no masculine like edge or hardness to it, like with the Bonnie and Clyde sweater, or even like the Cher sweater, because it's like got these big shoulders, like, or like the Gautier that has this kind of like couture edginess to it. Like, there's none of that. It's all very like soft lines and like very flowy. But there's something about it as well that is like very powerful in its own way, and I'm trying to embrace that style more. I used to be really afraid of not having any sharp edges. I used to be really afraid of anything that was too drapey or too flowy, particularly if it covered my waistline, because I kind of felt like it was like unflattering. But I tell you what, it's very comfortable, and there is something powerful about that color combination as well. Like, because you're not going with silhouette, the focus is all on like the texture and the color, and then like the texture juxtaposition between like the fluffiness of the top and then like the silky smoothness of the skirt, and then also the flowing lines, like the sweater being slightly oversized so that it drapes, and it's quite fine gauge sweater, so it has like a lot of drape to it, and then the skirt being like not necessarily oversized but like deliberately like A-line and like a big skirt, not like a pencil skirt, creates this like lovely flow. And then the color combinations, gorgeous. Like the way that the blue and red combine, and then the pink and the red, I just think they're gorgeous color combinations. And then the third scene, it's not a sweater, but like this is yellow shirt with a blue skirt. Just stunning. And I think that if you're not super focused on like slimming or emphasis, then you can focus on just like color blocking and like creating a kind of story with the outfit just through like color and texture, which I think is really brave and really beautiful. And that is a big style inspiration for me going forward, especially because I've just turned 40. I'm going to do a video. I have an upcoming video on like refining my style a bit, or like revisiting my style and styling myself for this autumn and winter. And I am thinking a lot about what parts of my style are still like me and what's working, and then what's just like I feel like I ought to wear it because I've always worn things like this. And I think this film was a big influence on like me choosing to start styling my knitwear slightly differently. And I've been really enjoying wearing some of my oversized sweaters with like a flowy skirt without needing to like tuck anything in or belt anything. And just kind of like, as someone who's like a size 16 and grew up feeling as though I should be skinny, I was like, oh, because I'm not skinny and I have an hourglass figure, then like I should at least be emphasizing my waist if I can't achieve skinniness, I should at least be emphasizing the one part of me that's the smallest. And actually, I don't owe anyone anything. And I think that like that kind of like flowy look is really sexy in its own way. That's the end of my list. This is such a long video. I have many sweaters that didn't make it into the shortlist because I simply don't have enough time. But I would love to do some deep dives on particular sweaters and particular films. I'd love to do like a rundown of every sweater in a sweater heavy film, and I'd also love to do a deep dive on a couple of these sweaters that have like really interesting backgrounds, particularly that Marilyn Monroe sweater. Please let me know below what your favorite knitwear in cinema history is, and anything you feel like should have been included in this list. And also let me know what you'd like to see more of. And I will be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.